Well, one team that we know aren't going to win it is Australia. While you're here, Eddie, I know it's as harsh as it is. Everything around Eddie Jones at the minute, when you talk about it on your show, what are you saying? Like, for me, I'm looking at Eddie Jones, and I've been a big fan of him, especially being in the media, gives you some nice sound bites that you can laugh about. He seems to now have lost not only the public in Australia and England before, but he seems to have lost the dressing room, and that's a really harsh thing to say. And I'm going based on a snapshot from some of the interviews that we've seen, the press conferences before and after. Is it time for Eddie Jones, do you think, to move on, or do Australian rugby stick with him, regardless of the result against Portugal? But it's probably an obvious one if they lose against Portugal. Do Australian rugby need Eddie Jones, or do they need to move on? Do you think?
I think it's a little unfair. They gave Eddie the chance to rebuild Australian rugby in a lot of ways, and he went about that to change culture and environment, and whatever he decided to go in there and do, he's decided that he needed to remove some of those senior guys. Now, whether that's right or wrong, and they're great men, I know them personally well, but that was the decision he made. So you bring a lot of young youth, inexperience, and I don't know, sometimes it can affect performance, but in the long run, they've tasted a bit of World Cup rugby now. They've got 4 years to build to something pretty special in their own home. I feel like someone like Eddie, you know, I don't know, it's hard for me to really call it, but I feel like he's, that's the position he's in, and that's kind of the way that it's been shaped in Australian rugby.
They got talent out there. They do have talent. They had more talent, I thought, than what they brought over here. I think they were missing Harry Wilson and two of those fly halves that they left at home. O'Connor, Cooper, Lolosio or Foley. They could have done with one or two of those guys. So I think there were some selection things. But Eddie had a bit of a free swing at it this year, didn't he? Because he came in and he said, look, it's a 5-year plan for the next World Cup. So he could do that. He could bring in new players, and if they went well, he looks like a genius. And if they don't go well, he said, well, you know, it's been the system. I think Eddie's a good coach. I thought the timing of the decision was poor. Regardless, taking the coaching ability aside, the timing of it was poor. They didn't have enough time to integrate a new system of play and a new culture into that team. Plus, I thought at the time, again, regardless of Eddie's ability as coach, I thought it was a wrong time to remove Dave Rennie, who I thought was getting a real lot of traction. I'm an unabashed Dave Rennie fan for what he was doing with the Wallabies. So anyway, someone has got to take responsibility for this.
What I did pick up on too is I talked to Tim Horan the day after the game, and it was the first time probably in my whole life that it was a more of a respect and love moment between Australia and New Zealand. Tim looked back going like, man, we're in a tough place, and we need our brothers to help us. We want rugby in our region to be strong, and it was a nice moment. It's actually on NZR Plus. Show.
It's hard not to love Timmy, though, isn't it?
But on that, JK said the same. I heard him talking about his brothers across the Tasman Sea, out to see where the Tasman Sea was, and obviously worked out that it was the sea in between the two great countries. But I said it on the podcast that I do. I was like, Australia, like, we need a good Australia team. The Lions tour's there in 2 years, the World Cup in 4 years, and people are like, why do we need a good Australia team? Why do, you know, the USA, the World Cup's there in 8 years' time, they're not that good. But the history and the heritage that they've got, and I'm going to double down on the comments about Eddie, when I look at it, everything around the coaches now seems to be more than being just a good coach. It's about binding the players, the team, engaging with the media, which he has done in a certain way, engaging with the fans, and it feels like that's the missing thing. It almost feels like this World Cup for Eddie Jones has humbled him. When I'm watching it, threatening to walk out of press conferences, the rumours around the opportunities in Japan, which we know Eddie's got history of, the comments about Wales that he made a few years ago that have come to bite him back after getting absolutely pummeled by Wales.
We've all put our feet in our mouths at some point, haven't we?
But it feels that we do.
I know I have.
Jones. I think
I feel like
it's better for having him.
I feel like he's got a plan. I don't know why. I just
you can feel it.
Well, before the World Cup started, he said, there's a group of young men that are going to taste World Cup rugby, and I'm going to pick them on character, and we're going to build an environment and look at in 4 years' time. And this is part of the pain of that process. And now, whether that's right or wrong, and Mertz, I agree, should have been some guys.
Yeah, because well,
Pete Samu, you played a lot with Pete Samu, could have been across here as well. Like, I thought they had the talent to be reasonably ambitious at this World Cup, rather than just kind of rolling over and say this is a preparation for the next World Cup. And I think it's a bit hindsight to it. I think they did come in with some hopes that were unfounded given the personnel they selected.
Yeah.
Anyway, they've got a big one against Portugal. There'll be a lot of Australians down in Bordeaux cheering on Georgia against Fiji, I'm sure.
Of course, well,
They've worked it out.
Just on Fiji as well, they've been unbelievable this tournament. If we look forward and just think that they'll be playing England in the quarterfinal, we saw what Fiji did to England. I don't know how much of that game you lads saw, but they were unbelievable. They were unbelievable. It was a shock, not because they won, it was a shock in the way in which they did it, the physicality, the power. They have been phenomenal, the athletes that they've got. Have they got a chance again to beat England?
But you summed it up. It's not like, the Fiji of old where they might have scored 3 freakish tries and no one knew how it happened. They are genuinely like world class. They're set piece.
Are Fiji contenders now for the World Cup? Say it.
Consistency's their thing. Doing 3 games back, isn't it?
Yes.
3 games. Yes, they've got the potential to beat anyone on their day, but 3 games back to back to back is their challenge. The kicking game. They out-kicked Australia in the kicking game.
Yeah.
They've brought that into the game. It was unheard of. Remember back in the day, we played Fiji before the 2003 World Cup final with Canterbury. We gave them a hit out. They were all wingers, certainly in the back line, possibly in the forwards as well. And they just threw it, and they just ran, and the ball was gone. So they didn't used to kick it, and now they've got a kicking game as well. I think this game, if it does end up England against Fiji, it depends on England. If England turns up, they've got a squad, they've got a strength of team and defence that could and should beat Fiji. But if they don't turn up at close to 100%, then they're in trouble.
Their style of play, right? It'll be England will go to set piece and try and muscle. If Fiji can match, which they have done, which is probably the surprising thing, who knows what can happen. Like Fiji genuinely have probably the best 12 and 13 in the game, and then the outside backs are up there. Like
they're monsters. They are.
It is a phenomenal attacking prowess they've got out there, and so as England found out, who knows what can happen.
We know this is RugbyPass TV, so we can go headlines. You don't revert back to kind of old school TV newspapers. They can do it. I genuinely think Fiji are real contenders, and I say that gold medalists in the Olympics, some of the best athletes walking the planet. The fact that they're managing to put it together, the kicking game, which kind of came out of nowhere, really. I mean, it was one of them. They're just going to run Australia off the park, and they actually outskilled them in that kicking game, which was something that I wasn't expecting at all. And you put all that together, like you said, if they've got them all, their scrum's a lot better than it has been, then what team live with them? But I suppose it comes down to they've not been into the knockout stages, the semis and the finals once you get to that point,
which
is
whether
experience,
they can genuinely believe in themselves to do it, or and genuinely have that ambition, isn't it? Which is new to them in this context. But yeah, on raw ability, absolutely.
But they've got a fantastic coaching group too, and we know now that a real skill in coaches is to inspire the group and believe in themselves and motivate them to truly believe they can do something bigger than they ever thought that could happen before. I think that coaching group probably can.
Well, that's